that we understand who's in the building, who's working, and we have a track in that. Just so you know, I reached out to the union, made sure we were on a good ground with them, make sure we're all working on the same page. They absolutely support this and understand this. But I wanted to just follow up from our last meeting because I know it's something that we talked about doing, and it's here for your review this evening. It's rather crude and simple, but I think it should be when you're looking at a sub. And I just want to present that tonight. And I'll take any questions you may have.
I don't have any questions. Anybody, Cinda, anybody else?
The only thing I would like to suggest is maybe get rid of the word failure. You can put
Instead of failing?
unsatisfactory or, failing.
Sure.
I mean, something, because I know how hard it is to be a substitute. And a lot of the success of a substitute depends upon the preparations that are made ahead of time by the teacher. And you walk into a room, into a subject that you're not certified for. If you get through the class with people in their seats and at least trying to do something, that cannot be considered a failure.
Yeah, we can absolutely work on that. Fair enough.
Any other comments? All right. I think this is a great move in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Lauer. It's okay with you? Can I go to number 2?
You can.
Number 2, we want to also provide some clarity around long-term substitutes, as that was something we discussed previously about evaluating them as well. We had to double check the PA code, and in particular the CSPG and the BEC that was recently released surrounding this. And what it states very clearly is any long-term substitute who's working more than 70 days in one position will need to be observed, evaluated during using our Danielson framework, as this affects their timeline for level 2 certification. If they are working 70 days or less, then it's a local decision if we observe them or not. What I'm recommending we do is there's no need for internal forms. If they're there for 70 days or more in the same position, we'll use evaluation rubric that all teachers are exposed to in PA ETEP, the Danielson form. And then if they're there less than 70 days, we can use the local one that we just got feedback on today. So that allows a safety net without the system becoming too redundant, but we have a measure in place for both, if that's okay with you.
I think it sounds good. Anybody else?
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
In general.
Yes, ma'am.
So we get our substitutes from Kelly Services.
Yes, ma'am.
If we evaluate and we deem that a substitute is unsatisfactory, at what point do we tell Kelly who we will allow them to, and we stop that person from subbing for all classes or just for certain classes, or how much leeway do we have?
It depends. I mean, we look at everything and see where it's at. If we see a comment, maybe it's just not good for elementary compared to secondary, we take that in consideration. We would look at all different options to see what we can
All right,
and cannot do. Jared, I know you work closely with Kelly. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, at any point, the principals have the ability, there's like an incident report form that they can log in to Kelly Services and file individual complaints with for individuals, or, give a substitute accolades for what they've done. But then, the principal and Kelly Services can make the decision, either whether it's by building, whether it's by grade level, whether it's by teacher, that individual substitutes can no longer substitute for certain reasons, like I said, by teacher, by building, by grade level, by school, however, or at all. They can never step foot in our district again. We have the ability, and Kelly's really, I don't say they can ask questions, but that's on us. Like that's our ability to do that, kind of no questions asked. We have to have a good reason. And you have to put it in there, but we absolutely have the power to do that at any point.
I would say, though, Ms. Cinda, it's not uncommon. Maybe you find a person who's not good for elementary, but maybe better secondary. So we take all those into details and we empower the principals to make sure that they weigh that out and look at that and talk together. Because what we also don't want to do is move that person around and they're not a good fit. If they're not a good fit, we know right out the front, then that's a different conversation. But we retain those rights.
So let's say somebody's chronically late, or they don't do their hall duty, or they disappear during cafeteria duty. They're not doing what they're supposed to. Do we send a note to Kelly every time that happens so that we've got documentation for that? Or are we going to be keeping that in the schools? How, I mean.
Yep, that's a good question. We're going to do both. So one, we'll make sure it's in PA ETEP. I spoke to PA ETEP. They're not going to charge us for extra users. And if you say, well, Mike, why go to that level? Because we have one central repository for everything. So we'll use that on our level. But we'll also follow up with weekly phone calls or daily, if need be, with Kelly Services to make sure they're aware of the challenges we're facing. So I think it's going to be a combination of both,
Okay.
right? It won't be one or the other. It's going to be a combination of both, depending on the need and the issue. If that, I know that
Okay.
sounds kind of
No, that's-
convoluted, but if that
that's
makes sense.
flexible, and that's good.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would just like to offer that, before we make the decision that somebody, isn't a good fit for X class, but might be better for whatever, that, Mr. Heinrich or somebody else be involved in that conversation, because ultimately I would think that the question might come back to, not to Kelly Services, but to the district. And I would hate for y'all to not be aware.
Yeah. And honestly, if we're going to do this the right way, they're deserving of that feedback, good or bad too.
Right.
And we have to be fair and cordial with everyone. So I agree.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. If it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, number 3?
Keep going.
What I have hyperlinked for you in item number 3 are just some admin regulations that we created to the posting and recruitment of people for long-term substitutes, as well as for extra duty, extra pay. During our conversations, I know that's one thing that we said we can tighten up internally, make sure we do have better internal controls, and we present those this evening. Again, it's an internal document that we will use, but it will guide us so that we know how to move forward and have some consistency in place with the posting, advertising, and recommendations of long-term subs, as well as those individuals for extra duty and extra pay. Again, Ms. Uta, if it helps or not, I sent that to the association, asked them to send it to their PSEA to make sure we're all on the same page, and they came back with no changes or nothing contractually that threw up a red flag. So this, again, just tightens up our internal controls. I think it's a step in the right direction and reflective of what we've been asked to do.
Linda, anybody else?
No, I get something for later.
Okay.
I would like to thank you for trying to codify that procedure so that it's not so scattershot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my fault. And I'm glad we tightened it up. And again, if you see anything go haywire with it and we want to fix it, tighten up later, we can do that. But this is a step in the right directions. And then what we'll do, so Mr. Harley has provided that with all the principals, have a meeting with HR. We also reached out to the IU. The IU is going to come in and do some HR training with our administration. That's the good news. The bad news is we're probably going to punt it till the January 17th countywide in-service day, because our thought is if there's a price, all the schools can share in that price,
Oh, absolutely.
or they can all benefit from it as well. So we're getting to it. It just won't be done until January 17th, but we have reached out to them, and that's something we're putting in final.
Without knowing the facts, I would be surprised if some of the smaller districts had a very large HR staff or department either. So
Well, I think it's always a good training. We discussed it, and we want to make sure that these admin regulations are not only being applied, but they're understood and the reason why behind them, and that makes sure we follow proper protocols as well as best practices in industry, and that's what we want to tighten up, sir.
Well, ultimately, our goal is to make sure that we have the right people
That's right.
in the classroom or serving as coaches, advisors, whatever, so that our students benefit the most that they can, and the taxpayers are getting good results from how we use public funds.
That's exactly right. And we want to make sure the process, I know the board values transparency, that everyone understands the process and we follow it. So now it's enumerated in writing. We feel comfortable moving forward that it can be done as good as it's been in the past, but if not even better. Next one on the list, on Monday night, we'll bring to you several vacancies for long-term substitutes. Right now, we have a shortage of substitutes available to us. It's a challenge we're facing daily, and it's very hard to overcome that at times. And let me preface those comments. We're not saying people are just calling off the call off. That's not it at all. People have a lot of things going on in their personal life, a lot of family issues. It's just a lot going on. But what is one big hurdle for us, Ms. Lowry, is the lack of subs in the district. We are working to do that. I applaud the board for providing that incentive to try to recruit and retain additional subs that you approved at our last meeting. But we do have some long-term vacancies coming up that we want to make you aware of that we'll talk about on next Monday via executive session, as well as then appoint people at the regular meeting. And Rob, anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you're right. I think we're telling people to stay home if they have symptoms too. So that's another, added layer of precaution. So people are calling off at a higher frequency, which is it's adding to the sub shortage problem. The ELA positions, they had interviews today. They had 4 candidates that interviewed. So we should be sending you a recommendation for both the ELA at the junior high and senior high on Wednesday. The Family Consumer Science, you should have received the recommendation from Mr. McElhaney and Mr. Johnson. You did not receive it yet. Well, you'll have it tomorrow because he sent it to a niece and I yesterday today. We have one applicant for that job. She's doing a very nice job. She's in there already as a day-to-day sub. She is a certified family consumer science teacher with many years experience from a different district who was furloughed once upon a time when that district downsized. BCIT, we don't have any viable candidates as of yet. However, we are looking at some possibilities for emergency certification there. German, we have 2 viable candidates that we will send to you again by Wednesday. You should have a write-up on those. I think you have those already, though, don't you? You have those already. Yeah, so go ahead. Business, it's business, communications, information technology. Business teacher.
No.
No, that'd be tech yet. Yeah, this is him. So, and then the SLP, which is speech language pathologist, we have no candidates for that. We're probably not going to find any, but we do have a couple of ideas to post that and widen the search a little bit.
And if we can't widen that net, what we're going to do is do what we did in the past, look at .com or different vendor that we can use. I did reach out to IUP to see if there's some kind of partnership they can work with us. And it's my understanding that right now is not a good fit there for them or a good time. So we'll probably bring forward a contract for .com on Monday night so our kids can still be provided services.
Awesome.
For the 5th grade position at Ike, Mrs. Eisenman had interviews over the last few days for that position. She is going to have a recommendation for you by Wednesday. And with that, just on the horizon, we have 3 more expected long-term subs in that building alone. No, that's just an Eisenhower. So, yeah, so we've had a little stroke of bad luck. It looks like the stars are aligning, and that building is going to have a serious need for long-term subs coming up here. So, you expect to see many, many more recommendations here very soon.
When you say there's long-term subs, are these positions going to be open next June? Or they're going to go back in by
We don't
teachers coming back?
We don't anticipate the elementary positions being open. They could always turn into openings, but none of them are expected to be open. One of the ELA positions will be a permanent vacancy. That was for Robin Bailey Orchard, or Jeannie Mitzko. Jeannie Mitzko retired at the last minute, and we posted it as a long-term sub with the understanding we would be posting a full-time position here by the end of the year.
Correct.
Yep, that's correct, sir. Any other questions about any of the long-term subs?
How long are those other 3 going to be? Are they expected to be 9 weeks or longer? Are they?
Two of
They
them.
won't
Yes.
overlap so that you could have one sub and then have that sub move into another?
No, unfortunately, that was our plan. We knew one of these was coming ahead of time. We were going to move one of the other long-term subs to that position. However, that is not going to pan out now. So we are probably going to have 3 new positions that we're going to have to hire that are going to be, for an extended 12 weeks or more.
Well, I mean, hopefully, since they're all in the same building, maybe you've got multiple candidates in the that were considered and interviewed that might work out, so you're not reinventing the wheel and constantly posting. And
We did. I believe Mrs. Eisman conducted 3 interviews on Friday for the 5th grade position. So we do have some candidates, and we hope to have more. We'll keep you posted.
And if it's okay with you, Ms. Aller, I'll move on to the next item.
absolutely.
On Monday night, we're going to bring names from some extra duty, extra pay assignments, in particular, 2 assistant swimming coaches, as well as the junior high government association advisor. We'll look at that information and we can discuss the qualified candidates in exec session and then hire later that evening if the board feels comfortable with that.
Is the junior high position one that they've always had and it's just not filled, or is that a new role?
It's one they had before. I think there's been some change in leadership that they want to look to sustain the position, but I can get clarification tomorrow and let you know. But I believe it's one we had before. Did we not, Rob?
I believe it's what it's like.
Yes, I think it was one of the English teachers who left. Yep.
So perhaps we can, like we have somebody from the high school SGA come to the meetings, maybe we can invite that a student from the junior high as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. Burdick,
He's at the high school.
He's at the high school.
why
This is
can't
junior
he-
high.
Why can't they meet in the same room if he does both?
Different schedule, different buildings. Sometimes, I mean, we can look at that and see if he's eligible for both. I think so.
Couldn't you get like a political science major at IUP?
It's a supplemental pay, so anyone who wants to apply for it has the opportunity to do that. Yeah.
You have a name for it, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing somebody to it.
Yep.
So, and you're gonna follow your new procedures.
Yes, sir.
I can hardly wait.
The only other thing, Ms. Lowry, I didn't have it on here, but I'll provide you a copy tomorrow. We need to look how we evaluate coaches, in our opinion. So we'll work up something. I have something worked up that I can provide you. You can look at, and then we can address that in December. No need to do anything now. But when we look at making decisions on hiring, I think this is part of our policy and personnel. If we're going to do for subs or para or other positions, I think this is something that it could be applicable. And again, we don't have to do it tonight, but I think it's something the board could consider.
Well,
Mike, if you could get that to Uta before she retires, I'd appreciate it.
I am confident that this committee will be in excellent hands.
So am I.
So I think if we're talking about coaches, I think we need to look at advisors as well. You know,
Basically, I should do the extra pay list.
Okay.
Should be under the same evaluation.
and obviously, you know, the assistant coaches, the coach should be part of that process somehow.
Agree. Yeah, the thing I
Right.
did, it just for the board's awareness, the one thing I spoke with the association about, and I agree with them on this one. If I ever have a point where I get a teacher, someone from IAEA and as athletic director, well, they wouldn't be able to evaluate their colleague. That would have to go immediately to the principal. And I think that's a no-brainer, and I think that's not a big deal.
Right. I just think we've come a long way in wanting to do this, and, you know, thanks for all the time and energy that you've put into, you know, getting us something.
Is
to
there
look
any
at.
input from the participants, the students in this process? Is there any evaluation from them?
I know the high school does collect some qualitative feedback about the coaches and about the programming. Now, does it outweigh everything else we do? No. Is it something they can take and use as qualitative data? Yeah, they could. And that's something they've been doing at the high school, I think, since last year, I believe.
This is the second year.
Yeah, second year. So, yeah, that's something that's part of the process as well.
I don't think any of us have seen the results of any of those reports.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I can always bring it forward. I think it's something that's more internally when we look at the candidates, but if you ever want to see that, that's something we can always discuss as well.
So my suggestion would be that, that those are looked at, considered, along with the evaluations and looking at, you know, people's roles and is this a good fit and
Agreed.
does this help the team?
Well, and the academics.
Well, yeah, and any extracurricular, and so maybe an aggregate result, but I wouldn't want to get individual,
I agree with that. I think this is
Evaluations
part of
and
the principal
assessment.
scoping and filtering.
Summation. And if we need to get deep into the weeds, then.
Or an average.
Yeah.
Otherwise, otherwise we're starting to do your job.
I
which I
couldn't say that
don't really want
better.
us to do.
Yeah, nobody wants to do your job, Mike.
Thank you.
We're
We
surprised you want
couldn't
to
do it as well as we do it, that's for sure.
You know, the one thing I will say, Ms. Lowry, we are pretty blessed and fortunate to have a lot of people who want these positions in coaching. Because if you ask me, the only thing worse than being a ref is now being a coach. With the amount of criticism and attacks they get, it's going to be harder and harder to fill these positions. And we're going to do our best we can to evaluate people, support people. But I think this is a step in the right direction to give them meaningful feedback that helps, shapes, and shapes their program to come.
So, Mike, I know this is not on the agenda, but I was reminded that when you said that you're going to have the Aaron folks do some in-service training on HR, I think it might not be a bad idea to just kind of, as we're implementing some of these other tools for substitutes and long-term subs and coaches and advisors, and to really take a look at
Sure.
the amount of time and efficiency and how do we address this and how do we maintain this? And if that means a position of some sort or a hybrid or whatever, you know, shuffling of responsibilities, providing additional training, I think that we're at the point where that may be something to consider.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing I'd bring up, not now, we have to have more discussion about it. I think we have a responsibility as a board to stop the spread of misinformation. And I think we have to look at our branding, look at the way we communicate. And the next meeting, I had lunch with Miss Blank today, which was delightful. Over at Pan Asia, if you haven't been there, you should. Um, and I asked her respectfully. I said, "Look, maybe we should talk about outreach and talk about how we communicate and how we connect with their families, because what a lot of schools are facing now is the spread of misinformation. So we're going to take a little bit more aggressive approach, and that training can help maybe alleviate other ills, so we can get better at communicating that, and more than just my COVID letters." And that's something I need to improve on, but that's something I may want to talk to the board about later down the road when we look at those options, how we can re-engineer, reconfigure. But we have to also, in addition to HR, I think we have to make our communication efforts a little bit more targeted, frequent, and we can work on that too as well.
And, I think we rely a lot on technology and on the internet and on texting or whatever, but I think we need to remember that we don't exactly live in a county where we have incredibly wonderful Wi-Fi service or broadband service or whatever. So just to make sure that information is accessible to everybody, even if they aren't able to get online. And I don't know. I mean, I think radio is an option.
Mhm.
And I just want to make sure we don't forget about people who choose to receive information differently than us.
I agree. I've been using the Gazette. I kind of fell off a little bit on my radio visits, but I can try to pick that up with Todd Marino. He does a good job interviewing. I like him.
I think that some people don't read as well as we think they do, so it's hard for them to digest large things. And I think that when you speak it out, I think it's effective.
I agree. And I think what we're going to also do, we are kicking around some ideas today when we do, in addition to the radio broadcast, if we do some videos, internal communications, can we share it with the radio and other people to play as well, just to keep awareness and getting the correct information out there? Because a lot of our time is dealing with that. And I think it's time we have to,
Pick up our game.
and let people know the truth. Because right now I'm chasing a lot of misinformation. And I have more important, please don't think, I'm not trying to be rude or unappreciative, but we can get better, and hopefully that will alleviate some of the
I heard
elements.
a lot of this information Tuesday, November 2nd, a lot of it, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
You can't possibly believe that.
So-
It's-
I love the one that says that shots let you be bioluminescent. And so I'm waiting for that to kick in. Who needs a nightlight?
So I guess my question to the outreach and to you, Mike, and Randy, if he's still hanging around here somewhere, we have a YouTube channel that we show our board meetings on. But and I don't know anything about the technology, so I'm just asking a really stupid question here because I have no idea whether you can even think about this. But is there a way on that YouTube channel to have a section or whatever where some of those videos that you're going to make would show up as well? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Okay. Well, that's
Also, you could make like playlists, and one would be like the
Yep.
board meetings, playlist of supervisor, superintendent meeting. Yeah.
so. My point, I guess, is that we do have maybe some other outlets. If Julia, you're right, where people don't want to read a long diatribe, and if you're going to make those, go to the effort of making those, then posting them on a YouTube channel might be a way to get some of that, especially if we put together a decent campaign to get the word out to the parents and the community if you want to know what's really going on, check out our YouTube channel, because that's where we're going to have this information.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, sir. That's where they'll be housed. What we have to do is get better, create a consistency and expectation and a framework of how we want to communicate and when we want to communicate and what we want to communicate. We met today, myself, Rob, Randy, Amy, and I had 2 principals involved, and just collecting feedback, collecting ideas. But that's going to be more a focused approach. I say this: we have great families, and we've been communicating with them pretty regularly, and I think they're excited about that. But I think where I need to do a better job is tell them about the good things going on in District 2. Right now, I've been telling them about the bad, and that's a little bit reflective of the current environment we're in too, with COVID and everything else. We want to now tell our stories a little bit more, because you know what? Despite some individuals' thoughts, our middle school is named Program of the Year in STEM. Our high school is named one of the top programs in STEM in the Commonwealth. Look at some of the changes we've done that people have now either replicated or want to be like us. and do the things we're doing. So we need to tell our story a little bit better. And I need to grow up a little bit and shift from the negative news, because that's all I've been dealing with as far as the pandemic, and now focus on a lot of positives, because we have a lot of great things going on here, supported by a lot of great teachers, administrators, and support staff and nurses. And we want to kind of celebrate that. You know, like I said all along, when this whole thing started, you know, I worry about the people the most, because our nurses are there fighting the front battle. So is our custodians, our support staff, our teachers. So we have to try to pick each other up, because, you know, right now, Mr. Schroth, if you ask me how do we increase morale, I couldn't give you a good answer other than be good to people, be kind, because right now we're going through a storm that the whole country's facing.
We are, and so you have to accentuate the positive.
That's right.
But, you know, one person said to me that she was, two people actually commented to me about, for example, the elementary reading program. And they seem to believe that, one said it's a shame somebody started that it cost $1 million or something. And the other person said it couldn't have. Now, I don't know if that's the kind of thing that we can figure out in an action plan, how to address if it reaches the point where people are concerned. That's just an example.
Right.
But, you know, and it was the idea that we'd ever spend that was absurd.
Right.
But
That's just not true.
it's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes I think there's things that have to be, but there has to be a plan, and I think then you have to advertise what you're going to do. I don't think it needs to be a 10-page plan,
Agreed.
like a crisis management plan or something.
Agreed.
But something that is flexible enough that it can address needs as they arise.
And yeah, correct misinformation before it becomes, it's like, you know, like we were talking with the principals, it's like a pebble. When you throw it in the water, there's a ripple effect. We want to kind of stop that ripple effect, because all we're doing is then chasing and correcting misinformation when there's a lot of good going on. And let's celebrate that, because that's what a lot of our parents care about. We're pretty blessed to have great parents, great families, and they want to know about the good things. And we have to help steer everyone towards the truth and steer everyone towards all the positivity that's going on in this district, because right now we could be grateful for a lot of things. One, we're open. Two, we've been open. And three, we're going to stay open. And that's because of your leadership as a board to provide the services that the kids need and the resources that our staff needs. Now, we're going to have issues with subs. You know, I'm not going to lie to any of you on this one. We still have to figure that out as we continue to go through, but we're doing everything we can, and we're just going to take it one day at a time. I know it's not a great answer, but that's just where we're at right now, the reality of it.
I'd like to bring up the high school newspaper. It's still a print version, and none of the kids that are working on it are going to work for a print newspaper, and working in a more digital mode, and also being able to be more responsive, so that they get the score of the basketball game the next day. So I'd like to change kind of how that's run, but I'm not sure how to do it.
Yes, sir. And Mr. McElhaney and I have talked about that, and we're going to work on that, and we will have a plan to modernize that very soon.
And my thought is that if people are reading it, then communication can be easy. It doesn't do us any good to have a YouTube channel that only Walter watches.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't do much of that either.
Yeah,
So.
Nope.
use your phone.
And I apologize if I didn't communicate it, but we do have an online version of the High Arrow. It's available off our website under students and staff. So that's being done. I think to your point, though, one thing we need to get better at is people really care about the sports and extracurriculars, how we communicate that. Right now, I authorized the coordinator policy. I think I talked to Ms. Uta and Ms. Cinda when this happened. I authorized the sports to have their own Twitter account. We still don't have our Facebook. I mean, I'm just going to keep it on Facebook, but we do have a Twitter social media, but we have to get better at finding somewhere to put that on a website. And that's something we can improve as well.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, we're getting there. You know, I think you're going to be, not to go down the road, but I'll just make it real quick. S'more, it's called S'more. It's an online newsletter that schools are going to use. So we met today and we're trying to work those details. And what we're going to do, Mr. Harley, because it does impact your committee, rather than them coming with a principal report per se, it's going to be in the newsletter that they'll send out the 3rd of every month. That way, prior to your committee meeting, every board member will see it. And that way we can spend more time talking on the agenda items, not necessarily going through the board reports. And then what you'll see is what all of our parents will see. Because we thought if you need it, and I'll say this to be rude, we spent a great deal of effort and time communicating with you. And maybe we need to shift our communication to continue communicating with you, but also hit our target audience, which is our parents, so they are aware. So that's something we're doing internally that we're expecting to roll out this month. Just need a little bit more time and a little bit of money. There's going to be some money involved in it, and I'll bring that toward the committee. because there's a subscription fee to this online newsletter that we'd like to use, but we're making those strides because I think right now, if you see what's going on nationally, we have to make sure we stop the spreading of misinformation.
Well, the finance committee, our target audience is certainly the taxpayers, not necessarily the parent. They're a subgroup under that.
Yep.
There's no question that.
Exactly
I
right.
mean, we focus a lot on the parents and communicating with them, and we're going to get better at that. There's no doubt in my mind. But there's also
Yep.
this whole group out there that funds us.
That's exactly right. And I think, from, I'm not tooting our own horn, but since you hired us, the last 4 years, we went from an archaic website to do 2 new websites, and we have a now social media presence. Our communication has increased, but we're like everyone else. We can get better. And this is the next evolution. So it would be 2 things, the s'mores newsletter, and then 2, a little bit more videos in 2 realms. 1, short-term videos, like, hey, here's a weekly update maybe. And then 2, a long-term. Let's talk about the importance of PBIS. What does that mean in district? And try to archive these. So when people are thinking about moving to district, I can simply just send them a video and they can learn the truth and everything they want to know about the district.
And the newspaper ties in that we can get students to generate content,
Mhm.
and they can do it in a timely manner.
Yeah, and yep, agreed. And students have done a nice job. I'm looking at their site now. I think the video is the next big thing for us, and we have to just see how that looks and what that feels like. But we're going to get to there. I promise.
Like, I just think the other piece to this is technology is great and videos are awesome and the website is great, but how are we communicating with people who don't want to or are not able to receive information that way?
Agreed.
And, I think maybe that's where, the student newspaper or another student group can really help figure out what the different options are.
Yep. And I think
You
if we
know.
combine that with our radio and our newspaper, I think there's a lot of good avenues we can get. We're getting better.
Yeah.
It just, I have to quit making excuses, but the pandemic threw us for a little curve. We were on a roll, but we
Yeah.
got to get a little bit better, I got to get better at that, but, we will.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, good. Something we can put on your improvement plan.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I have, Miss Lauer.
Okay, I don't have anything else either. So I think we are done, and it is actually
6:09. It's a new record.
You say that surprisingly.
We started at 6:35, we got done at 6:09.
So Tom, take a page out of Moose's book.